Good day, rodents. And as you can see, I'm sitting here with our former SRC President, Siyanda Makhubo. Now, a lot has been going on with regards to his resignation, as everybody now knows. So we decided to just have a one-on-one chat, an exclusive interview with the man himself, and just find out what exactly happened from his perspective and what his perspective is. So please, do join us. Hey, Sia.
Hi.
Are you well?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
I'm good. No,
Great.
I'm good. So yeah, let's start at the beginning. You posted a tweet at a particular point in time. Now, I think just to start off this conversation, what propelled the tweet? What were you doing? Where were you? What were you thinking? What was happening at that point in time when you decided to put the tweet out?
Right. Firstly, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure, to state your side of the story. And, the tweet was from a conversation I was having with a group of my friends on Twitter. And it was basically about karma. We were speaking to karma, and one of my friends asked me a question: wouldn't it be funny, or what if a member of the BSM were to come to ask you guys for help, such as appealing for a DP? What would you do then? And to respond to that tweet came out, So, and then obviously someone caught on with that, and that tweet was then isolated and created as a tweet that arose from nowhere else. Yeah.
Okay, and then how did you find out about it? What was happening? Where were you when you realized, okay, this has just gone on Facebook and it's about to get real?
Yeah, I was at the VC's office. I was having a meeting with Gordon Barker, who's the university's proctor, and we were having a meeting with members of the Student Defense Council, and it was basically about a certain case. And then my phone kept on ringing, and messages kept on coming through. At that stage, it was around 12:30, and then I excused myself, and then I went to one of the administrators, to the Vice Chancellor, and asked to see what was happening on Facebook, and there it was. My tweet was posted on the Rhodes SRC page, and at that point I understood the magnitude. I mean, there's 7,000 people on that page, and I understood the impact it would have. And so at that stage I asked Mr. Barker to excuse myself, and then I immediately ran to the SRC offices. And when I got to the SRC offices, in the presidential office, the Vice President, now your President, and the Secretary General were there. And then I had asked the damage, what was happening, how we doing, how many likes, how many comments. And then they expressed to me that it was hectic and it was bad. And at that point, I then made a conscious decision. I called in the staff, the advisor, Mr. Ofei, and the financial administrators, Ms. Shelley and Mrs. Kivitz, and with the other two colleagues, and my friend, who has been a friend of mine even before the SRC, Ms. Raselabe, the Student Benefits Counselor. And I had told them about my intentions to resign the presidency. At that time, it was around 2 p.m. And then at that time, I had a word with the SRC advisor, and then finally at 4 p.m. I had submitted my official resignation. And from at that time, I had then drafted my resignation letter, and feeling that I owe rodents that much to explain why I was resigning, and not just to have the institution itself say the president has resigned due to personal reasons,
word
that diplomatic decision. But then I took a decision to draft a statement, sort of an open letter to all Rhodes University students, and to let them know of my resignation. And then I had sent an email to the rest of council and calling them to an emergency meeting at 6 o'clock. And the meeting was chaired by the Vice President, and there was only one item agenda, and it was the SRC President. And then I explained the context of why we had met, and I then read my resignation letter. Yeah.
And how was that taken? What was their response? Well, even from when you just called a few people early on in the day, how was their reaction?
People who know me personally know that I'm a very strong person, and emotions, I can't really express myself emotionally. I'm more of a keep it moving, keep it going. You know, I don't really take no to emotions. But at that time, you know, everyone in the room was just in tears. Everyone was just heartbroken. You know, you can imagine how it came, you know. And someone uttered the words to me, but it's just a tweet. You know, are you really going to give up just because of a tweet? You know, you might as well apologize. You know, but at that time I had made a decision. And even with counsel, you know, there were certain counselors who were, you know, at a quest to convince me otherwise, as if they felt that it was about that time where, you know, I was going to make a groundbreaking decision, you know. But no one ever contemplated that it would be to leave the SRC, it would be to leave the presidency. And, you know, about 5 councillors were actually convincing me otherwise. But I asked that they respect my decision and that I resign as president.
So had the tweet situation not happened, would you still have been the president right now?
Sure.
How did the tweet impact your decision?
Yes.
And no doubt, hesitations.
Yes. You know, earlier on this year, I had 2 separate emotional breakdowns. And a lot of people who I've served with, a lot of people who are close to me, will tell you that although I can't express my emotions, I'm emotionally attached to everything I do. You know, my work is you know, tied together with my passions. It's tied together with my aspirations as a person and where I want to be in life. And so if I work as, for instance, an academic counselor last year, I was genuinely helping people because I wanted to help. You know, most of the times it wasn't my place, for instance, to advocate for plagiarisms. That was not my jurisdiction. That was jurisdiction of the defense counselors. But I felt as academic counselor, it is my duty, you know, to assist students. Coming early this year, you know, a couple of counselors on the SRC, including the academic counselor, had problems with their visa situations. And I was that person who assisted once again students in terms of their academics. So I've always been championing, you know, for student governance. I've always been championing for student rights. And you know, for me, you know, being attached emotionally is one of the greatest, you know, things that come with the work. You know, you need to be attached to the work, you need to be conscious of what's happening around you. You need to understand people and their social backgrounds and their experiences. At that time then, you know, the whole phenomena was about, you know, can you handle this as a person any longer? You know, after 2 emotional breakdowns, after having consultations, you know, after assessing myself as a leader, I thought it better that I leave the institution, because perhaps I was not ready for the institution. Perhaps I was putting the discretion or the integrity of the institution on the table. And I gave this analogy to the council to say, when a packet of apples has a rotten apple, it is best that you remove a rotten apple. So to ensure that the entire packet itself smells great, that it looks great, and people can appreciate the packet. So removing myself from the institution was to protect the institution, firstly, to understand that SRC is an institution. You know, that councils come and go, presidents come and go, but the institution remains itself, and that its integrity must be protected, and the student body must appreciate and see the SRC as a center of their student life here on university. So to me, it was a conscious decision in that regard, respecting the institution itself, understanding what the institution has done for me in terms of growth and development. It was better that I leave the institution so that the institution can go on, realizing that the institution is a movement and not a stagnant organization. It was best that I leave office.
Now, as is well known or not known, you have sacrificed a lot, obviously, in your term as academic as well as president.
Yes.
Resigning after you've done so much and after you've sacrificed so much of your own personal life, of your own academics, do you feel like it was worth it? Or tell me about the balance of, you know, your own personal sacrifice on your own degree, and now, you know, not being president anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you know, last year I was in my 3rd year and I was supposed to graduate in this year, and that didn't happen because of the amount of work I put myself in, because I sacrificed a lot of my time academically, I sacrificed a lot of my social. I found myself, you know, being the superhero. You know, I shouldn't have, and I realize this now. But then, you know, sometimes it's in people's nature to assist. It might be a strength or weakness, but obviously it has been a weakness for my life in the long run. But in the short run, it has always been about assisting and helping others, always being about giving back to other people and ensuring that the next person is happy. And at times, I have been selfish with myself and not to make the person that is Siyanda happy, and rather see other people happy. And, you know, academically, that has been a shortfall. You know, I missed a graduation, and I had an opportunity to start again this year. And this year I had a great opportunity to give back. So, you know, when one had to balance the two, then, you know, one had to go. And was I prepared to let my academic and my life in the long run, you know, be at jeopardy? Or was I prepared to let go, you know, this thing preventing me from that? You know, and I will always champion student governance, and I said this to the SRC when I was speaking to my resignation, that I do not need a position to give back. I do not need a position to advocate for student governance. You know, it's just an advantage, and I said this in one of the interviews I had with Welcome earlier on, that it is an advantage and an honor, privilege to, you know, to be able to be at the center of student governance and to be able to lead a student body. So for me, it has always been about, you know, it has been coming. That at a certain point, in the words of my dad, that at a certain point you need to say, stop this, because you have a life to continue.
Okay. Now going back to the tweet, I don't think a lot of people know that actually you are one of the academic counselors who's got the most DPs back, who has helped students in bad academic situations, you know, come back again. Now, do you think what you tweeted was blown out of proportion, or do you actually think that maybe you shouldn't have said what you said?
No, you know, I'll say this, and I've said this on a number of public forums. It was a irresponsible thing for me to say. I acknowledge that. I put the integrity of the SRC to question. A lot of students were having doubts whether the very same SRC will be in a better position to assist students. And, you know, it was when you hold an office, and this is where I guess the neutrality questions come to being. When you hold an office, just like the former Vice Chancellor, Dr. Oppidan, he held an office, and there were things he couldn't say, but because he's the former Vice Chancellor, there's things he can say, you know, and it stems exactly from that. The fact that when you hold office, you cannot detach yourself from that office. And perhaps it is the hardest lesson I've learned, that, you know, you cannot. It's just impossible to detach the person from the office, because you are the office, you hold the office moves with you. So one has to be very careful what they say, and it is a lesson I hold dear to heart.
Okay. Now talking about the SRC, I can imagine it must have been a little bit awkward, or maybe not, especially because Lindo had to, you know, publicly state. I don't know how your relationship is with him. Has it at all faltered? Or explain to us the internal process, if you can. Not even process, but just what it was like having to kind of come back to your SRC and say, okay, I've messed up. I've put us in an awkward position. What's happening now?
Yeah, me and Lindo come a long way. We were serving together last year on council. He was the activism councillor and I was the academic councillor. And we both decided to run and again for office with Ms. Moyo, who was the vice president. And we came through this year as ever, you know, as an association stronger than ever before. And, you know, he is one of the few people on council who were very loyal. You know, everyone on council was loyal, but if there has to be someone who was always loyal, you know, was always championing me, and at times I've questioned whether you should be loyal at this stage. You know, he was one of those people who were always supportive, and myself with the now president, Mr. Makhubo, would, you know, spend hours in the office until 3 a.m. at times, doing schoolwork and sometimes SRC work, and we grew to have a relationship, you know, a brotherly relationship. I even call him Zuzu and he calls me Yaya. You know, we do law together in the same class, we would share notes, we would do assignments together. So unfortunately, he was placed in a position, and one needs to be very mindful that it is his professional position. And the Secretary General of the SRC, he is mandated to be the spokesperson, and that was his mandate at that time, and understanding the amount of pressure and understanding how it must have been difficult to him as a person, I supported him, and I said to him, I sent him a Facebook message yesterday to say that, he said to me he was very sad today. I was congratulating him with the battle they have won with the DSA, and I sent him a message to say congratulations, I'm very proud of you. And then he responded to say to me, thank you, I wouldn't have done it without you, but I'm very, very angry with you leaving. And I said to him, I know, I'll make it up to you, So unfortunately, people don't understand the relations behind the SRC. I've grown to be more of a brother to him, friend. We're just those people in council. Yeah.
Okay. Now also another question, another relatively awkward question that has been coming up on social media is, do you think that your SRC threw under the bus?
Not at all, not at all. The greatest thing that an institution needs to do is to detach itself from the bad. The same packet of apple story, it is the very same thing the SRC did, and I must commend them, and I was one of those people behind the scenes saying, yes, I acknowledge, and the SRC should, rightly so, move away from these statements. They do not in any way reflect the intentions of the SRC. An apple smells, and an apple needs to be removed. I was always, advocating for that. And, I was very proud and very happy that they've dealt with it in the most professional, most humane manner they have. They basically came out in their most diplomatic way to say, look, we are an institution. We do not recognize with this. We do not know where these things are coming from. It is up to the person who say these things. No one threw me under the bus. If I may, I threw the institution under the bus. Yes.
Okay. Now that you're out of office, how are you adjusting to life after the presidency? Any major changes at all?
It is. It's very weird, not having responsibilities. I have been tagged a couple of times on the SRC page, but not as much. It's comforting, really, And I was talking to my mom over the phone, the messages coming through. I got more than 1,000 messages, people, just expressing, their heartfelt gratitude and saying to me, don't worry about it, this is how it is, and that on its own is comforting. When I walk around campus, people give me hugs, people give me smiles, people saying you'll always be my president, and that on its own is comforting, and someone asked me, how does it feel? And I said, surprisingly, it's great. I've never felt so much love. I even said, I wish this happened around the 19th of March. When Rhodes Must Fall happened, I wish I could have had so much comfort. Perhaps it would have done things better, and perhaps it couldn't have been at the stage. But it's comforting. It's encouraging. And it says to a lot of things that your sacrifices have not gone down the drain. People took note. People know, and people understand.
Okay. You speak about Rhodes Must Fall, and now that you're out of presidency, you don't have to be so neutral anymore. Former President.
Yes.
What is your personal stance?
Look, I've always said that, and I know people, some people, especially people like Welcome, would like this to come out well. I've always said to interviews I've had with him that no one can detach themselves from office, rightly so, as per the precedent set by Mr. Padat, Dr. Padat. And now that I'm not president, obviously. And however, it is an awkward position because I was leading an SRC on the banner of neutrality. And, and I think people need to understand neutrality on its own, because we've been, the SRC has been accused that neutrality on its own is not taking a stance or is not taking leadership. But it is leadership on its end, and it is brave and courageous leadership. Let me tell you why. Because, you know, when you are an SRC, not elected on a political organization, it is very hard to gauge what your mandate is. You understand that your mandate is to exclusions, appeal, you know, represent committee meetings, advocate, you know, SRC, ensure, you know, well-being of students. You understand that mandate. But when it comes to politically conscious or politically informed decisions, you don't understand what your mandate is because you don't know what or how you're elected on based on what ideology. So it is very easy, for instance, for UCT SRC, for them to have Aluta, SASCO and DASO in the SRC to understand what their mandate is, you know, and for them to advocate based on that ideology because their electorate elected them on that card. Now for us it was very hard to gauge, and I think as an SRC we were very courageous and bold to admit we don't know what our mandate is at a political stance of that magnitude, and realizing the amount of pressure. Now this is not just a Rhodes University phenomenon, it's a national phenomenon. So one had to be very careful on how they navigate around the situation, and ours was to listen, to debate. You know, I know we've been accused of people trying to balance conversations, but in no way was it trying to balance conversations. Particularly so, we understood that at the emergency student body meeting, a minority strong voice came out, but we didn't know what the majority of the student body still wants. Hence, we rolled out the dining hall talks, and they've been helpful. And before I left office, one of the biggest decisions I took was to devise a timeline which will be communicated by the SRC, as it lies with their responsibility now. And a stance will be communicated by the SRC, as I understood before I left. A stance will be communicated by the SRC based on dining hall talks. So it was not a neutrality. It was not a decision to take neutrality and just close conversations. It was neutrality to keep conversations going and to inform the SRC of a stance. Remember, the SRC is 15 individuals. Personally, I'm a Pan-Africanist, so already that should speak to my stance as an individual. However, that one is not. That one is a nationalist. That one is a center-left. That one is a right. So you know, it was very hard as an SRC to navigate, and that's why we took that responsibility to put on the student body so we can derive a mandate from that. And I trust and I have faith that the SRC will take a bold decision and a stance.
Okay. And CS stance? Do you think it's should change?
You know, at this point it's not important, and you know, because I'd like to think that to a certain degree, you know, no matter how you look at it, my stance would obviously jeopardize what the SRC is trying to do. And as someone who respects the institution, I'd like to, you know, keep it at that, to say the SRC will lead us. You know, sometimes we just have to be led, you know, allow leadership to take place, and they as a leadership group have that mandate on their table right now.
All right. Lastly, you're out of SRC now, but yes, you've been through a lot with them. Are you still going to continue being involved somehow as a, I don't know, as a mentor, as a form of guidance, or just advice? Or definitely. Are you done?
Definitely. I will be that person on the Rhodes SRC page advocating for the SRC, because, you know, and then I said this earlier on, a lot of people criticize the SRC without institutional knowledge and background. You know, the SRC at Rhodes University is the way it is at Rhodes University because of the institution itself. And if we are going to transform the SRC as an institution, we need to take a top-bottom approach. You know, the Forte SRC finds itself in Forte because of that institution. You know, it goes back to institutional culture, which is in question right now. And you know, it is very important that the student body understands that firstly there are people behind the SRC, people with feelings, people with lives, people with backgrounds, people with experiences. And you know, I will be that person to ensure that the student body understands that, you know, that there is knowledge. Before you criticize, there's been a number of people saying how the reshuffles were done, you know, it's uncalled for. We must understand that the SRC is guided by the Constitution, and it needs to be, you know, it needs to abide by that Constitution and nothing else. So it is things like that that I will, you know, offer myself the responsibility to take and to inform and educate people of the SRC institution itself.
And lastly now, as we end off, there's been a lot of, as Rhodes would say, spice being thrown. Memes. Rhodes University, where leaders quit. Now, being that leader who they're referring to, how would you respond to that?
Firstly, with the memes and the gifts and the, open letters and etc., there was a time I called my parents and I said, Mom, Dad, I've made it in life. No president at Rhodes University has ever received the amount of memes I've received, the amount of gifts, the amount of, open letters, and I've made it. 50 years from now, people will be telling their grandchildren about me. You've made it in life. And, and it speaks directly to the amount of work the SRC itself has put into the institution itself. It speaks to the fact that we have, for the first time at least this year, we have personified the SRC. People understand the SRC is run by people. Most times people could not find the SRC approachable. I was a first year one time, I would never imagine to approach Mr. Marilek and ask him a question. But for the first time this year, we've opened their channels. And that's how I receive memes, as an expression or as an interpretation of the amount of work we've put in. Once an institution opens up its doors, it opens itself to be vulnerable to criticism. And that on its own is a milestone. However, with the Rhodes, Rhodes University, where leaders quit, and I said this in an interview I've had, that we need to appreciate the resignations we've had this year. In previous years, we've had resignations of our counselors due to personal reasons, academic reasons, and the such. For the first, in many years running, we've had resignations this year due to the internal workings or the internal functioning of the SRC itself. And that speaks to a great proverb of the Amazulu people that says, "Inja ikonkote hambayo," which means a dog will never bark at a stationed car, only bark at a moving car. And we need to appreciate these resignations, as hard or as hard-hitting they might be, or as I know there's been a number of posts and comments where people question the legitimacy of the SRC itself now with the amount of resignations, and people saying, but we did not vote for this one to be in this position, and it speaks to an organization, an institution that is a movement. It moves, it changes, and it takes uncomfortable and bold decisions. And when in its quest to take these uncomfortable decisions, it receives resignations, and as soon as an institution recognizes itself as a moving institution, then the bad things that do not belong with the institution, or the things that don't fit with the bigger goal of the institution, need to leave. And that is the institution. Itself, it entrusts itself on its own. It is bold, it is strong, and that is why I say that we need to appreciate these resignations. They're resignations because people have come to realize that they're not fit for office, and we need to be appreciative of that people are honest to say, look, I cannot lead, I cannot serve, I cannot give back, and I think it is time for other people who are, better equipped to lead to take on the baton. And that is, I think, something we really need to appreciate. As having useless councillors who say, I can do it, but they don't do anything. I think we need to be appreciative of that.
So there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think a nice way to end off, whether you're doing bad or good, things are going to be said anyway.
Yes.
And to just grow from all experiences, whether you've made mistakes or whether you've just stumbled. Life unjalo mos.
Life unjalo, friends. You know it. It's just like that.
Just like that. You've heard it from him himself. Thank you.